the weekly Wednesday workshop. All of you, I'm excited to talk to y'all this week. So I've been doing this since quarantine, and it's something, the highlight of my week is getting on here talking about colorism, raising awareness about colorism, facilitating, coping mechanisms and healing related to colorism. And shout out to all the people who've been tuning in consistently. I have some regulars, some returning viewers, so I love all of you. Make sure when you join, hey, Instagram, I see y'all too. Oh my gosh, I gotta wave at all y'all. Hey. Where was I? Oh, so for all the people who consistently tune in, even if you can't stay the whole session, right? I know we're all busy and have varying attention spans. Hey, y'all. So I appreciate you tuning in, even if it's just for a couple of minutes. And these are available for replay online. Hey, Sienna, good to see you again. I put them on Facebook and YouTube and on Instagram. They're available in IGTV now. Yes, so I don't have to worry about saving them on Instagram because I can, after the broadcast, I can save it to the IGTV and you can go back and watch it if you can't stay till the end or if you want to share it with someone else even after the live stream. Hey, Seth, so proud. Thank you. Yes, Seth, the writer, has a podcast for everyone. Check it out. We've done a couple of interviews together. We did one in 2017, I believe, and another one during quarantine talking about life in quarantine. So check out Seth's Writing with Seth podcast. Hello, Jandel and Janice are on Facebook. If this is your first time tuning in, let me know where you're calling in from. I'm Sarah, by the way, Dr. Webb. I've been doing colorism healing for a long time, and things have kind of grown over the years, and I'm really most excited about the Colorism Healing Writing Contest. Whoa, sorry. I don't know if y'all heard that. Somebody accelerating outside. So a big announcement is that we have the live book launch in less than a month. It's less than a month away on June 26th at noon. Seth says, please mention how we can support and share if we can't stay for the whole episode, but want to support you. Love. And after, so the best way to support this is to just repost it or share it. Follow, subscribe on other platforms. So if you're watching on Instagram and you haven't liked the Facebook page yet, or follow me on TikTok, that kind of thing. And the same for the folks on Facebook, right? So another way to support, if you can't stay the whole time, is to send this live link to your friends, maybe that someone else can watch and tune in. And then you can also just like and subscribe on other platforms so that you stay abreast of all that's going on, so that you get notifications of things like the writing contest, things like the book launch, right? So thank you for asking that question. Charlotte, North Carolina. Hey, what's up? Charlotte, I flew through Charlotte once. I really like y'all's airport. Calling from Charlottesville, Virginia. Hey, Jesse Wilkinson. Nice to see ya on here. And then we have Los Angeles. Hey, LA in the house. So we got a bi-coastal audience. Shout out. Ransom Juno Woodson, viewing from Baton Rouge, my hometown. Hey, homegirl. So today's topic in the Wednesday workshop is intersectionality, right? And I have to tell y'all how I got inspired by that. So I'm also on TikTok, and on TikTok you can do duets with people, right? So if someone posts a video, you can record yourself reacting to their video on the side, right? And so I watched a video by a young Asian woman, and she was talking about her privilege, right, as an Asian American. And she specified specifically being a light-skinned Asian American, right? And that has been like my most popular video on TikTok so far. It has like over 70,000 views, like over 15,000 likes, which for me is a lot. Okay. And so that kind of inspired me to think about like the cross-cultural connections that we have when it comes to colorism, and also talking about things like privilege, even amongst people of color, right? A lot of times we acknowledge white privilege, but there are also other forms of privilege, right? There's intersectionality. So that's going to be the topic for today. And I would like you to chime in, ask questions. I do respond to questions, even if it's slightly off topic, because I'm doing this for you all. This is a service to you, right? So if something comes to mind that you'd like me to address or discuss further, I'm happy to do that. And then also your comments, right? So a lot of you are probably familiar with intersectionality and colorism and racism and all those kinds of things. So I love to read your comments as well. Okay, and remember, I do this every week, and I have on June 10th, we have a special session with my sister. She's going to be co-hosting, Jandel Crutchfield. We're going to co-host, and we're going to talk about allyship. So she's several shades lighter than me, but she sees herself as an ally. So that'll be fun to have a co-host. She'll be my first co-host, aside from my niece and nephew who came on a couple of weeks ago. They were adorable. On Instagram, we have proximity to whiteness is the metric of value. I was so glad to find your page. Yes, D1, thank you. I like your page too. So D1 on Instagram talks a lot about intimate partner violence and domestic violence and empowering people to stand up for themselves and advocate for themselves and defend themselves. So I'm glad I found your page as well. Hey, Coastal Flower. So intersectionality was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in the late 80s, early 90s, right? And she actually coined it as a way to talk about violence against Black women and violence against other women of color in particular. And it's intersectionality is just like it sounds, right? So we have streets that intersect, meaning we have traffic coming from different directions that converge into a single point, right? So when it comes to our forms of oppression or inequality, right? There can be multiple sources of inequality, multiple sources of oppression, right? So that's what intersectionality is about. Violence against women of color, especially Black women. We're looking at race and gender, right? And how that both of those things together influence how you experience violence or how you walk in the world, right? How you experience privilege too. We're going to get into that a little bit. Janelle says, love you, Malaika. Yes, my co-host from last time. Hey, Jahi. Oh, yay, Jahi. Okay, so I have to give out a shout out to Jahi Mackey, who is the founder of the 821 Project in Baton Rouge. And he's doing a lot of live virtual events on social justice, identity, awareness, cultural politics, and things like that. So we have some really, really good people who are tuning in. And so I'll make sure to save the chat and on both Instagram and Facebook. So afterward, you can follow all these amazing people who are doing great work and great service to the community, right? And so I know even Jahi can speak to this topic of intersectionality. And so colorism, obviously, I founded Colorism Healing, right? So that's my particular focus. That's my labor of love, my passion project. So colorism is intersectional. And we can be a race, a specific race, and we also have a color within that race, right? So just like I said, my sister, who's going to be co-hosting in a couple of weeks, is several shades lighter than me. We have the same parents, the same mother and the same father, which means we are the same race. We have the same racial category, but our color, our actual color is different. So same race, different color. Y'all with me? Hey, oh my gosh. Okay, the Colorism Project just joined. Hey, Jyoti Gupta, who's also an author of the book Different, Differenter. So check out her book and her page. She and I are looking to collaborate more in the future as well. So just the whole team is on here. So when it comes to colorism, a lot of times we use the words race and color synonymously, especially in the United States, right? So I know a lot of people are international. So in the US, people use color as a euphemism for race, right? When we're kind of scared to say the word race, we say, oh, why? I love people of all colors, right? Or thinking about the infamous Martin Luther King quote that I hope my kids are judged by the content of the character and not by the color of their skin, right? So a lot of times because we equate color with race, or we think that they're synonyms, we can overlook issues like colorism, right? But the idea of intersectionality is that no, my color is one thing and my race is something else, right? Especially amongst people of color, because we have a wide range of appearances, a wide range of phenotypes, a wide range of hair textures amongst African Americans, amongst Latinos, amongst Asian Americans, a wide range of eye colors, right? So there are some people of color who look visually, they look white, right? And then we have people of color who are several shades darker than I am. You know what I mean? So we have the rainbow of melanin in our communities. And so that does impact our experiences of racism, right? That does impact, you know, how we are discriminated against and when we are discriminated against. D1 says race, class, gender, etc., right? So that's another thing about colorism, is that gender plays a factor. That's another intersection, right? So not only am I dark-skinned, but I'm also a woman, right? Not only am I a dark-skinned woman, but I'm also African American, which might be a different experience than a dark-skinned woman who happens to be Mexican American, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Thumbs up if actually leave question marks if I'm confusing you at any point, or ask clarifying questions. I am happy to restate something. Jendelle on Facebook says, right, skin color, shape of nose. Actually, I saw an Instagram post this morning, or was it a Twitter post, where someone was talking about the bridge of their nose and how they always hated their nose. They wanted a more European bridge. Eye color, hair texture, size of lips. Yes, when I was teaching high school, a lot of young Black boys were teased for the size of their lips, right, in my classes, right? That was one of the bullying things that people had to deal with. All part of intersectionality. Hey, Camille Wyatt, how are you? D1 says compound oppression. It's all indicative of white supremacy. Yes, so the oppression is compounded. And the idea of perfection, right? The perfect identity category being white, male, cisgendered, heterosexual, middle class or wealthy, in some instances, English speaking, right? All these things can give us various degrees of privilege, right? And so one question I have for you to think about, and you can respond in real time, or you can just meditate on it for yourself, is which of your identity characteristics or categories seems most important to you? Yes, able-bodied, absolutely, that's a big one. So able-bodied, right? As another form of identity that can be a source of privilege or a source of oppression if you have a disability. So for you, it's important for us to think about and recognize the aspects of our identity that we feel most aligned with, that we feel have the most privilege for us, or that we feel are the most significant source of oppression for us, right? And you don't have to be aware of your privilege to have it. Let me repeat, you don't have to be aware of your privilege to have privilege. You also don't have to be aware of your oppression to be oppressed. You can be oppressed even without your awareness of it, right? The Colorism Project says, aside from caste, language, access, and class are huge in India, right? So on Instagram, the Colorism Project is saying that in India, caste, class, language are huge in that region, right? Absolutely. Jahi Mackey on Facebook is saying gender is definitely an important intersection with complexion, especially as it relates to sexuality and sexual identity. Perceptions of dark-skinned Black men, for instance, can range from hypersexualization to pathologizing their existence, right? So what Jahi's referring to there, men with very dark skin have been fetishized, have been hypersexualized, have been seen as the buck, right? Even during slavery, the sexual exploitation of men who were Black men who were seen as like really, really rugged and athletic and strong, right? So that's definitely part of our history. So for me, obviously, being African American, being dark skinned, having 4C hair, that's my inspiration for talking about colorism, right? I have been deeply impacted by colorism, even probably times I don't realize it. An example of having something happen that you might not be aware of. So people say, well, I've never been privileged. I don't have any privileges, right? But for example, if I were to apply for a job and someone says to the hiring manager, well, yeah, I know Sarah, she's really great. You should definitely hire her, right? I don't have to know that that happened for it to benefit me, right? So just because we aren't aware of the ways we might be privileged doesn't mean things aren't happening behind the scenes, doesn't mean things aren't built or structured for us to succeed, for us to be in positions of power, right? A big one that I think about in terms of so-called invisible privilege is able-bodiedness. I talk to my students about this a lot, right? And never having to think about how you're going to enter a building is a form of privilege. Never having to think about whether or not you can get through the front door, or if you're going to have to find a ramp somewhere around back, right? That is a form of privilege. Jonathan Crutchfield on Facebook is saying, as a dark-skinned Black man, I've just accepted my role as the buck. Okay. Let's see. So I think that's one that a lot of people who are able-bodied don't think about. And that's another instance or sign of privilege, right? The fact that you don't have to think about the way your body moves in space, because if the elevator is broken, you can find a workaround. You can go up the stairs. It might be difficult. You might be short of breath afterwards, but it doesn't completely exclude you from being able to navigate your way through space. Rio Soledad on Instagram. An example, if I may, I never knew how well you're treated with a white sounding last name until I got married. Okay, so this is coming from Instagram. Rio Soledad says that your white sounding name, your European name, is a form of privilege, right? And there's been studies on that, talking about names on applications. I'm Sarah. I've had people look very shocked when they ask me, what my name is. Or my favorite is like going to the doctor's office and they say, Sarah, and I stand up and they're like, oh, we weren't expecting you to be Sarah, right? But yeah, even the privilege of your name, again, something that you didn't work for, something you didn't earn, and it can be invisible to a lot of people, right? So in the terms of like colorism and privilege, these intersectionalities create a lot of nuance, right? And unfortunately, some people use that nuance as a way to gaslight us and as a way to deny the existence of these things. Coastal Live Works says, I've experienced that as well. A lot of us will say, I've had this experience. And then someone else will say, well, I haven't had that experience. Does that negate the experience that you have had, right? And so a lot of times in the tweets, in the comments, right, because I am always searching for colorism stuff online, I'm always joining into conversations and things like that. A very common thread that I see online is, well, I don't see it where I am, or it's never happened to me, right? I'm dark-skinned and no one ever bullied me, you know what I mean? A lot of times we need to take into account how other aspects of our identity might be the reason why we haven't felt as much colorism as someone else, right? So an example of that is hair texture. I think a very clear example of that is hair texture and facial features, right? Featurism and texturism, right, are words that we use for that as well. So if I were darker skinned, but I had really long, straight or wavy hair, then maybe that buffers some of the colorism that's out in society, right? Or even class. So if I am dark skinned, but I have enough money to wear nice clothes and I have enough money to drive a fancy car and have those kinds of things, that might have buffered me or shielded me from some of the bullying or some of the rejection from society, right? So thinking, don't let the intersectionality, don't let the nuances be a reason why you invalidate colorism or other forms of oppression, but let that make you more aware of how intersectionality works, right? Various forms of oppression and privilege. A question on Facebook, I'll read this. Do you feel like the use of language for African Americans is a privilege, speaking in standard English versus AAVE? So I think that can be a form of privilege. So it's something that you can learn, right? And so I hesitate to call things that you actually did work for, that you actually did like learn as a tool to be privileged, right? So if you acquire quote unquote standard English, although that's a myth in and of itself, right? I would say that you have acquired a tool. You have acquired something that you can use to your advantage. But I think that's different from privilege in a larger sense of things that we don't deserve, things that we did not earn, things that we did not intend to acquire, like complexion or hair texture or that sort of thing. But I do see speaking standard English could be the result of various forms of privilege, right? So if I was privileged enough to go to a school where I had consistent teachers every year, where I had new textbooks every few years, where I had a good home-cooked meal at night so I could focus on my spelling words and my grammar, then that could give me more access to learning the professional version of English or standard English. Erica says, yes, right, that's definitely a myth, right? Because I said the same thing too, right, about, my education being a form of privilege, right? My education gives me access to spaces that people with less education might not get, right? And then so a person of color said, well, maybe, you shouldn't name that as privilege, right? Because you actually worked for it. So you acquired a tool. Well, they didn't say the tool part. I'm turning it into that, right? But because it is something I worked for and pursued, right? I think maybe calling it a tool that I've acquired more so than privilege. But I will acknowledge that my privilege made it easier for me to acquire the tool of education. I know that was a mouthful. Let me know if I need to repeat it. On Instagram, Sienna is saying, I think that this is the best live you've done yet. Thank you. I'm trying to get better every day. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to move in the right direction. This topic is new for me, and you're bringing up a lot of things that I've never considered. Absolutely. I think for a lot of people, we focus so much on the big categories of race, right? Or the big categories of color, if we're lucky, because that's what is pushed forward in the media or pushed forward in more mainstream places, right? But we don't think about how even within the same race, people are treated differently based on skin tone or class or ability or sexuality or gender, right? So yeah, thank you. I'm trying to get better every day. Erica says, you're good. This is awesome. Thank y'all. Jendelle on Facebook says, my daughter's name is Malaika. You're good. Oh, wait. My niece's name is Malaika. So Jendelle is commenting, but she's under the Colorism Healing tag. So I usually wrap up with homework and with affirmations, right? So this is a workshop, and I appreciate your questions and comments so far. Before I do that, though, I will dive deeper. What I want to do going forward with some workshop is dive deeper into specific intersections, right? So I want to do a whole workshop just on colorism and gender, for example. And I want to do an entire week where we just talk about colorism and class, right? Being middle class Black person versus a working class or poor Black person, right? So make sure you leave me DMs or comments if you are really just like chomping at the bit to talk about a particular topic. And I'm open to having co-hosts as well. because I do like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at the same time, I have to figure out the best platform to bring the co-host on if you're not with me in person. So that is something we have to look forward to in the future, right? It's specific nuances, the specific intersectionalities. But this week is just kind of an introduction, like Sienna said. Hey, Harry African, welcome back. Good to see you again. So this week was just an introduction to the idea of intersectionality, an overview of it. And so your homework would be to map out for yourself, right? Just like I asked earlier in the live stream, to map out for yourself, like which of your identities, is it your gender? Is it your race? Is it your ethnicity? Is it your citizenship status, right? We think about all of the problems we have in the US with immigrants who come from certain places. And yes, I mean certain places where people are brown and black, certain language barriers, certain gender differences, right? Even amongst immigrant populations, right? How women who are immigrating versus men who are immigrating. So this is like an overview of intersectionality. And so what I want you to do for your homework is to sort of contemplate your own identity categories. And include ones that you might not have thought about often, right? Like, are you able-bodied, right? And how might that be a form of privilege for you? And I like that example because it is one of the ones that people who don't have a disability don't think about very often, like even access to books, access to technology, right? Not being visually impaired and those kinds of things. And then also think about where you can be an ally, right? So if you are able-bodied, like how might you be an ally, right? If you are cisgendered or heterosexual, how might you be allies? If you're light-skinned, if you're white or white passing, or if you're a male, you know, how can you be allies to people who don't have those forms of privilege? And then if you are thinking about your identity in terms of where do you need the most advocacy, right? So are you in need of more advocacy because of your citizenship status or lack thereof? Are you in need of more advocacy because you are a dark-skinned, plus-sized, queer woman, right? And then do that for yourself. I'm always happy to share and talk further one-on-one, to maybe look at your bubble maps or your actual maps if you want to. And then the affirmation that I'm going to leave you all with, and I really appreciate your time, and I'm excited about next week and Juneteenth. I'm excited about Juneteenth, but on June 10th, that Wednesday workshop, I'll have a co-host with my sister, and y'all are going to love that. Y'all are going to love that because we have a special energy as sisters. So that's gonna be fun for me. My affirmation for you is related to intersectionality. And that's that I am a multifaceted being and I accept and embrace all of who I am. Okay. So tell that to yourself throughout the week, write it down, record it, say it out loud, yell it from the mountaintops. I am a multifaceted being and I accept and embrace all of who I am. Okay, so that's all that I have for you. Are there other questions, comments that you all would like to leave with everyone? Remember that there are people on these streams that are doing really great work. So I'll be sure to highlight them. And when I go back and leave comments on the recorded versions of these. Also, June 26th, I have to say it again, the live book launch. At noon Central Standard Time, we have 16 authors, I think 16 or 17 authors who are going to come on and read their work and talk about colorism and talk about why they wanted to join the contest and talk about why writing for them was a good option and telling their story. It is multicultural. It is international. It is a love fest. It's always my favorite event of the year. I always have to try not to cry, but I always get really emotional and really proud of the young people and older people, right? So it's all ages who are brave enough and courageous enough to come out and tell their story. And even for those of you who can't speak out or who choose not to speak out, but want to support other people who do, right? You can watch and you can tune in and you can ask questions live. You can tune in and possibly win a giveaway. So there are some things I want to give to people in the comments that day. Free books, maybe some free laptop stickers if you tune in live and answer questions and things like that. So yeah, I think that's all I have. And I will see y'all again next week. Love y'all. Mwah. Mwah. Wait, there's a question. Coastal Live Woke. I'm a new follower. Thank you so much for creating this space and sharing. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you found me. I have to make sure I'm following you back. If your profile is not private. Meech from Mushroom. Thank you so much for hosting and sharing this important work and topic. Can't wait to read your book. Yay. Love you, Seth. Bye. I miss y'all already. I'll have to wait till next week. Okay. Bye, y'all. Thanks, Erica. Good to see you.